Good evening, and welcome again for another Voice from the Margin. I'm your host, Ajamu Baraka, and I'm so honored to have a very special guest tonight, Seth Kaper-Dale, who is running for governor in New Jersey, someone who I had a chance to meet and spend some time with when I was out at the New Jersey State Green Party Convention, and someone who I was immensely impressed with, someone who really, I think, personifies the kind of candidates, the kind of person that we need to get behind and we need to push, someone that I think really represents this party and the potential of this Green Party. So I'm going to not spend too much time. We're going to get right into this. As all of you know, for our program, we'll start off with a few questions with Steph, and then we would turn this over to you to pose questions. This is a very important race. Someone like Steph, I think, has a real possibility of making a significant push and, in fact, being very, very competitive, if not being able to win, if we are able to get behind him. Very, very important race, very important ideals that we have this evening with our friend Seth Kaper-Dale. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to the audience, the things that you think are important for you. I know what's important. I know the kind of great work that you're involved in. So share with our viewer audience who Seth Kaper-Dale is.
Ajamu, thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you and everyone who's tuning in. It's an honor that you're going to give me some moments of your time tonight to hear about my platform. My wife and I have been co-pastors of a church for the past 16 years, and some people may say, oh, a pastor running for politics. Let me tell you what we've done the last 16 years. First, we've taken a congregation from 35 people to 500 people, from being an all-white congregation to being a congregation that has 50 countries represented through first-generation immigrants, as well as folks from every race and ethnicity who've been in this country for many, many generations. And we have started an incredible number of nonprofit organizations. We have 23 buildings that we own and operate now, homeless veterans, youth aging out of foster care, folks coming out of jail who are finishing up their Rutgers degree upon release but need housing, housing for chronically homeless, mentally ill adults, housing for refugees and asylees. We have this incredible web of housing. We now have a Interfaith RISE organization, Interfaith Refugee and Immigrant Services and Empowerment Organization, that's State Department approved, so we receive refugees straight into our community, as well as work with, we work by visiting the local detention centers to make sure asylees aren't just released into the back alleys of Elizabeth, New Jersey, as they have so often been, without a place to go once they've finally won asylum and are allowed to be in this country. They're not worth anything to the for-profit detention centers anymore, and so they're literally dumped outside, and we have worked with a coalition to make sure they have places to go. So we have all sorts of nonprofits. We've got a program, Neighbor Corps, for people coming out of jail that helps with gainful employment and personal development and social reintegration. That's the kind of administrative work we've done. And so when we say pastor, that's what we're talking about, is stuff that's built people up from the bottom. We always say the last are first.
I'm going to tell you something. You're talking about pastor. What I'm hearing also, too, is an organizer.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you build the kind of structures and institutions that you and your wife have built, that's the kind of work that we have to be involved in. We have to be building these structures that are addressing the real needs of people, because it's clear that the state is not prepared to do that. And we are trying to win people over to our cause of social justice. We've got to be able to provide those kind of programs and institutions that they can relate to. So now, Steph, share with us why you decided to run for governor, and why did you decide to run under the banner of the Green Party?
So since 2001, I've been a minister doing all these programs that I just mentioned. I love doing them. I've learned how to be a good administrator, but something constantly has bothered me, and that's that almost all the programs I'm involved in are about correcting something that shouldn't be wrong in the first place. Our housing for homeless veterans is for people whose lives have been turned upside down by their involvement in fighting in horrific wars around the world. The issues related to housing for folks coming out of jail is largely because folks have been put in jail for all the wrong reasons, or have been put in situations that have led to imprisonment because of massive poverty and broken systems. So at some point I said, I can spend my life throwing stones at tanks, and I hope I always do throw stones at tanks. But at some point, I want to try to climb into that tank and beat that tank into plowshares and pruning hooks. I want to transform the system and become an administrator of a new kind of system. And I believe politics does not have to be a dirty word. Politics is about taking care of the polis, the city, and we need to believe that the beauty of the city can happen. Reclaim politics as something beautiful, and I'm an administrator who wants to do that.
Why the Green Party?
I chose the Green Party because 4 years ago I stepped in to cast my vote for the only two options that were out there. And the options were Chris Christie for 4 more years, or Barbara Bono, a Democrat who actually wasn't part of the Democratic machine, not as much as they usually are. And in that particular election, 60 elected Democrats had publicly endorsed Chris Christie, who had been knocking out public school teachers and knocking out unions and bullying his way across the state. 60 elected Democrats were going for him. And I said, you know, every year I'm told it's a two-race, the election's just about a two-party race. But in this case, there's actually only one party, and it was the Republican Party, backed by the Democratic Party. And just my blinders came off at that moment, and I said, this is really disgusting. You know, if there's only 2 horses in the race, both horses have to be treated well. And there's clearly not a system in place that is truly about that. So I'm going to run, and I'm going to run as a Green or some other independent. 4 years ago, I wasn't sure yet what I would do. But that's why I'm running for the Green Party, because everything I believe in, every moral cause, every economic revolutionary cause is built right in to the creed of the Green Party, if you will. And it's the only place where I feel like I can actually keep my person, my values, and run as a politician.
You know, many people argue that it's not only difficult, but almost impossible to run as a third-party candidate. But you're doing this, and you're doing this in New Jersey. You are, in fact, a credible candidate. What is your plan in terms of strategy to prove the critics wrong, that it is, in fact, possible to run an effective third-party candidacy and, in fact, to win? What is your campaign strategy in terms of the kind of constituents and maybe even regions that you may be targeting for your work?
Okay, so first of all, I'm only running because I believe I can win, and that was a big part of it. I really believe this is the year to win. The Democratic Party chose a Goldman Sachs candidate and got the party bosses back in September of last year to endorse the Goldman Sachs candidate before any other Democrat even began to run. And for me, I felt like I should send a fruit basket to that guy, because it was just like they couldn't have given a more poster child of what's wrong with the two-party duopoly than to choose a Goldman Sachs candidate in the year of Bernie and Jill and all of the legitimacy, and of course Ajamu. This is the year when real progressives were beginning to make noise, and yet the Democrats in New Jersey choose again the Goldman Sachs guy. So to me, there's enough people in New Jersey who are waking up right now, and they're saying that if you're going to be progressive, you can't be a Democrat. It's not going to work in New Jersey. Maybe in some other states, things are playing out differently, but at least in the state of New Jersey, being a Democrat and being a progressive is starting to become an impossibility. So I believe that there's people who are going to move to the progressive side. However, since the primary, it's amazing to watch people kind of freak out and start saying lesser of two evils, all that kind of stuff. And so the beauty of my campaign is that most of the people in New Jersey did not vote in the last gubernatorial election. 61% did not vote. And that's the portion of the population that I'm going for. I'm putting my time and energy in there. I'm not trying to convert the faithful Democrat or convert the faithful Republican. I'm trying to go for folks who believe in a revolution of values and who believe in an economic revolution. And if some progressives that are currently caught in the duopoly decide they want to join us, great. But that's not where I'm starting. I'm starting with those who haven't been anywhere.
You have a very interesting approach, because you have an organizational base. You are attempting to organize from the bottom up. And that's also reflected in your major theme. You say the last are first. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about that thing. What does that really mean in terms of this campaign?
All right. So I am a pastor by trade, and some of you will recognize the last are first is something that comes off many pages of scripture. And the other part of that quote is the last shall be first and the first shall be last. It's time for a flip it upside down world. And I believe if we really are going to become a world that's about the commons and about the place that we can all have a shared beauty, it's got to start with a wellspring from below. Too often progressive movements never actually get to those who are struggling the most. And so I'm starting with those who are struggling the most. I'm listening to what their concerns are, and that's where we're putting our feet. Right now, we're in the process of 900 events in 90 days. And I have 900 people who are going out and taking actions on behalf of Kaper-Dale for governor. And we're starting in all of the high population areas that also experience high poverty. And we're listening to people, and we're talking to people, and we're handing out literature, and we're deepening our policy statements with the words that we hear from them. And it really is becoming something beautiful.
This sounds fantastic. As we are getting ready to turn over Steph to the audience, talk a little bit about what you see as some of the major issues in New Jersey that people are really concerned about, and where you're going to put your efforts in terms of organizing and engaging in public education.
Okay, so there's always so many different ways for me to come at this, and I know I've got very little time. So let me take two tacks. First of all, I like to say that the first three categories I think about are people who can't vote for me. But the people who can't vote for me are cared about deeply by those who can vote, and progressives care about these people. So children, there's 438,000 kids in the state who live in households that make less than $35,000 a year. In an expensive state like ours, that is atrocious. So I'm concerned about policies that matter to kids. I want every kid to be sure that they're going to have a place to sleep every night, and they're going to be able to wake up and go and get their education. I'm concerned about the shrinking amount of SRAP vouchers, and I'm concerned about the 40 years that the rich towns in New Jersey have tied up litigation around affordable housing and kept us trapped in almost an apartheid-like kind of state where wealthy people can live in certain towns and poor people are trapped in other towns. And the impact that that's had on the public education system are incredible. So I'm focusing on children. I'm focusing on people who are caught up in mass incarceration. I want to make sure that no one ever loses the right to vote. We know that's a dangerous road to go down. There's no reason why incarceration should be connected with taking away the vote. I'm concerned about the ways that people get ripped off making $1 a day, working in prison, oftentimes serving a sentence for something like smoking a joint or getting into the cannabis path, which in New Jersey leads to jail and in Colorado leads to wealth. So I want to change the cannabis laws, and I also want to see that people can make a living wage while in jail. My third category is immigrants. I'm deeply concerned for the 500,000 folks in New Jersey who are residents of our state, participating residents, but who are afraid of deportation each and every day, and for their children, and for the friends of their children, and for the mental health. So I want the whole state to be a sanctuary state. I want every immigrant in this state, undocumented or documented alike, to be able to get a driver's license in this state and be able to care for their family. So those are some of the things when I think about the last. There are three biggies that I like to highlight that I think are important to the electorate across the board. And one is single-payer Medicare for all. It is the single biggest issue that I'm pushing for that neither the Goldman Sachs candidate or the Republican Chris Christie lieutenant governor candidate have any interest in doing anything about. So I'm pushing for single-payer. I'm pushing for a public bank. I want to see that when we take $1 and invest it, rather than it being invested in Wall Street, that can turn it into mines in Honduras and mines in the Philippines and mother of all bombs to drop on Afghanistan. I want that investment to go into a bank in the state that allows us to build mass transit, that allows us to do a renewable energy future, that allows us to make sure people don't get foreclosed and kicked out of their homes, make sure that we can give low-cost student loans. And finally, progressive taxation. The state of New Jersey only has 7 brackets in its tax system. Once you make $500,000 a year, you're taxed at 8.97%. Other states have 12 and 13 brackets. And as you make more money, grotesque amounts of money in this capitalist world that we live in, people have to kick in more to the commons. And so as long as we're living in this broken world, I want to see the wealthy kick in significantly more.
So we're going to move to our audience. I mean, this is. I mean, you have. I mean, a wealth of knowledge, and there's so many of these issues that really impact on the material reality, the psychological, the spiritual reality of people throughout your state, really throughout the country. But with all those issues, and we know that we have to at some points focus.
Yeah.
Colin wants to know. Seth, what are the top issues, though, you think need to be addressed in New Jersey?
Single payer Medicare for all, a public bank, and progressive taxation. Those three are important as the central issues, and they have a whole bunch of other issues that are connected with them. The high cost of property taxes in our towns, which end up making rents extremely high, which mean poor people can't live in so many towns. Those can be brought down if we can bring down our local taxes. And the way we bring that down is by giving better health care to everyone. Single payer Medicare for all in the state of New Jersey will dramatically reduce costs, because right now we're just flushing our money into the toilet of the health insurance industry. And we need to stop doing that. So those are the key central issues that I'm working on.
You raise the issue of issues around immigration. Liz asks, she says she's worried about the 40 to 50,000 people in New Jersey who have final orders of deportation. Mm-hmm. Will their families be safer if you are our governor than they are now?
What I can tell you, Liz, is that I have spent the last 16 years of my life trying to protect families and keep them here. And I've been successful time and time again. For an entire year, the year of 2012, I had, for 11 months, 9 Indonesians with ankle monitors on their legs living in our church because I didn't want them to be sent away from their children, back to a country that they escaped in the late 90s as there was a bloodbath against ethnic Chinese Christians. So I've walked the walk when it comes to sanctuary. And even now I've been walking the walk. Every week, well, I shouldn't say every week, but 3 of the last 4 weeks, I've been outside at 4:45 in the morning outside the Elizabeth Detention Center, blocking the road so that no one can be deported. All that being said, 4 people in my life were deported in the last 6 weeks. We have experienced the pain that's coming from the increased hate and bias that's being expressed from Washington right now. It wasn't good under President Barack Obama either. He was the deporter in chief. But we've lost 4 people that are directly tied to the executive order from January 25th on the so-called security of the interior. So, Liz, I hope I can make it safer, and I'll do everything in my power to push to keep families together.
Clayton asked the question, can you elaborate on what you mean by a public bank?
So let me give an example of North Dakota. North Dakota in 1917 started saying rather than investing in Wall Street banks, they would create their own state bank. And every bit of tax dollar that came in, every authority, whether it's the roads or other authorities, all that money would go into a bank that was run by the state. And then the state could loan out money from its own bank, because that's the way banks work. You put $1 in and $10 are loaned out through a sleight of the hand to do either ill or to do good. A public bank that serves the needs of the state can help us with the things that matter to the commons. So there would be very close regulations around how this bank works. But the idea would be that all money coming into the state, rather than being put into some big Wall Street bank, would instead go into a state bank that would have the mandate to help the state become healthier environmentally, healthier in terms of making sure people can stay in their homes, healthier in terms of supporting schools, and healthier in terms of mass transit, which is also, of course, tied to the environmental things that we're concerned about.
Here's a question that I'm sure that you have gotten and will get as this campaign deepens. How can you lower property taxes?
The way to lower property taxes is by moving toward a New Jersey single-payer Medicare for all system. And this is what's so incredible. The very thing that sort of keeps us stuck in our local taxation system is something that we could change tomorrow. The health insurance industry is cleaning us out. So right now, municipal budgets would go down 15 to 20% in every town in the state of New Jersey, in all 565 towns, if instead of paying into private health insurance plans that don't cover you in every way, shape, and form. We paid into our own plan that was set up by the state and run by the state and served every health need for every person who's living in the state. So let's bring down property taxes by doing right by healthcare.
You know, that point you make is very significant. It is almost, it shows the irrationality of the system we have now. And not only can you lower property taxes, but you can eliminate the burden on small and medium-sized and even some large businesses if we were able to switch to a national Medicare for all system.
Absolutely. It would be the best way for new business innovation to happen. If businesses knew that they didn't have to worry that next year their health insurance premiums might go up 13%, they could commit to 15 now without the panic, to be honest, the legitimate panic that their situation might dramatically change based on the whim and the needs of billionaires in the health insurance industry.
That's what it is. It shows not only the irrationality, but the corruption of the system. That basically we are being held hostage by the insurance and the pharmaceutical companies. This is irrational to have the kind of medical system that we have here in this country.
But we're letting them hold us hostage. It's them that's doing it. But we have to take some ownership here and say, if we just cut it out, we could cut it out. So let's do it.
Exactly. We got to exactly.
We got to do.
Now, in terms of going back, in terms of strategy and prioritizing various constituencies, Caroline says that Greens need to appeal to minorities as a priority. What's your response to that?
I think that it was Caroline. Is that right?
Yes, Caroline
would be very happy to see what our campaign looks like right now. The vast majority of our energy is spent reaching minority communities, engaging minority communities, and creating policies that matter for them. If you look at my Facebook post from today, I published a piece called "Why Black Lives Matter More Than My White Life." And I really mean that. I'll let you read the post for yourself. But we have to get to the place where if the last are first, we recognize that certain races and ethnicities, in particular African Americans and Native Americans, have been treated so poorly in this country that it's time for a radical upside down moment and where they get treated first. So reparations is a serious big deal for me right now. One of the things I commit to is in my first 100 days as governor, I would put together a reparations commission. You're allowed to have 20 commissions as president. Look at me, I'm moving up already as governor. But there's only 18 commissions right now, so I think that leaves room for a couple. And I want one of them to be a commission on reparations. And I want a commission which is made up of African Americans and Native Americans who can look together at what it would mean to actually have reparations happen now. I don't want to make those decisions as a white guy sitting here in 2017 of what reparations looks like now. Because what happens is when I do that, I say, well, maybe it should have to do with housing. Maybe it should do with schooling, maybe it should do with this and that, but those are all things that should happen for all of us. Reparations has got to be something more. The only thing I know for sure is a huge apology needs to be part of any true reparations, but there's got to be money too. And I don't know how much, and I don't know to what it's directed. That'll be for the commission to figure out.
Guinevere asks, she makes a comment. My father is a hardcore Republican in New Jersey. And then the question is, how would I convince him you are the logical choice for New Jersey?
So you tell your father that there's a two-party race this year. And the two-party race is the Goldman Sachs Democrat and the Green Party Kaper-Dale. Those are the only two parties. Kim Guardano is riding on the coattails of a governor with 15% approval rating. The worst approval rating in the history of our country is what Governor Christie has right now. Republican Party is out. They're not going to win. So people don't need to worry that it's Democrat or Republican. It's Democrat or Green. So if a Republican feels a deep animosity toward the Democratic Party, I'll take your animosity and bless it within the Green Party. Come on in, because if you're concerned about an economic revolution, and I think a lot of Republicans showed during this last cycle that they could get on board with economic revolution issues, there may be something that we can talk about.
And talking about economic revolution issues, material needs of people, what is your stance? What is your position on the national phenomenon of pushing for a raise in the minimum wage? And how's that issue unfolding there in New Jersey? And what might be a minimum wage for New Jersey?
So I'm pushing for 15 now, and I'm not really pushing for 15 incrementally like some of the legislation is. I understand that things sometimes take a couple years, and 15 now in the conversations at the state level may have a couple years of incremental growth. But that's what we're pushing for right here. I'm very excited about any national movement, but I think the state movement can only encourage the national movement. So the same way I feel like a state movement toward New Jersey Medicare for all is wonderful, but I would, in a moment, prefer it at the federal level. I feel the same way with minimum wage. So we'll do our very best to push it as high as we can here, and hope to encourage the movement of the nation.
Now, one question I'm sure you've gotten before and would probably continue to get as a minister, a pastor. What is your campaign's position on the rights of LGBTQ folks?
So I marry far more gay folks than straight folks, and that's been the case for as long as I've been in ministry. I can't tell you that my whole life that's always where I was, but I had my sort of transformation of my understanding of LGBT issues in 1996. And that I spent time in college doing independent studies and coming to a place where I completely rethought everything I'd been taught. And that has been what shaped the last 20 plus years of my Christian journey. So I've been a big leader in trying to help my denomination move to being fully open and inclusive. And though the Reformed Church in America, which is a mainline Protestant denomination, isn't fully there yet, I've been breaking their rules the entire time I'm a minister by marrying gay folks and just waiting for them, and openly doing so, asking them to challenge me, that I might either be kicked out or that I might be able to lead to a transformation. So I'm fully committed to this. One thing that's important to me right now is, as governor, that I help the state understand transgender issues a little bit more. I want to thank President Barack Obama for helping the country move in a healthy direction around LGBT issues, but we didn't quite get to the T during his time. And I believe that that's something that we can do together during this stage of our shared journey.
Yeah, that's very, very, very important and very insightful comment. What can folks do to help? Jay-Z is asking, what can people do to help your campaign in New Jersey?
I just got to ask you, did you just say Jay-Z? Is Jay-Z on here?
Hey, well, maybe not that Jay-Z, but that would be nice if you had, because I'm sure he could give a lot of help.
Well, Jay-Z, whoever you are, I'm thankful for the question. The way you can help is going to CopperdaleForGovernor.com and donating. I've got to raise $430,000 by August 31st in the state of New Jersey in order to qualify for the debates. Now, I want to tell you that by going with a strong ground game, the most important thing to me isn't $430,000. It's that I've gone out and met 1 million people. That's more important than $430,000. But when it comes to talking to a national audience, most of you aren't going to be able to get here to help me with meeting 1 million people. So I need some help financially. So we have to reach $430,000. Every dollar counts. I'm nearing 100,000 now as we get to the end of June, which is a tremendous amount of money for a Green Party candidate so far in this state. So I'm proud of that. We've done that through hard work of small donations just from local people who are committed to the cause. But a boost from a national audience would be a blessing.
Gabriel says that he is donating to your campaign right now because he wants to see you succeed. Thanks,
Gabriel.
So you need, and I wish Jay-Z was listening because he could probably deal with that $430,000 with one little stroke of the pen. So Seth, in our last minute, what would you want to make sure that folks went away with from our conversation this evening?
So I'm the only progressive running in New Jersey. So that's my hashtag only progressive running. I hope that folks can get that message out, widely. But more than that, what I want to say is that I believe the political life can be a beautiful life. I believe our shared life in this world is about beauty. And that's what I want to see in this state. And that's why I'm running for governor. I've been able to experience beauty as I've seen transformation take place in my community not just in my faith community, but in the community that we've touched. And to expand that, to see the ripples go statewide, I think would be an incredible thing. People sometimes tell me, they say, Seth, since you and your wife came to this town and started your church, we have a more beautiful town. And I know what they mean by that. They mean there's a more of a human spirit and a shared purpose and a deep and genuine love and concern for each other. I want to see that in the state, and I believe I can offer it.
How do people get in contact with your campaign in order to support you?
KaperDaleForGovernor.com. It's very easy. It's KAPERDALE at FOR Governor.com.
Fantastic. Seth, I want to thank you for joining us here on A Voice from the Margin. And as many of our listeners know, the margin is a place where we reside because you can get the full picture. But we know that we are on the right side of history. And those of us on the margin are moving and shifting the center to us. And I think that your campaign, your views, your positions, I think really represent the kind of progressive edge, the kind of progressive values that the Green Party is all about, and those of us who are committed to social change are all about. So I really thank you for joining us. It's clear from your comments this evening that you are, in fact, a candidate of quality. And, you know, we need to think about not only getting you the governorship, but in fact, those larger positions as we go forward here in the future. So thank you again, Seth. And I strongly encourage everyone who will see this broadcast to get in contact with the campaign. Let's get him not only to 430,000, but let's get him more than that. But more than that, let's commit to building this party, building this progressive movement by getting behind Seth and getting behind all of the progressive candidates out there who are trying to make a difference in this crazy world. Thank you, Seth.
Ajamu,
thank all of you. Thank all of you for joining me again this evening for A Voice from the Margin. Join us again next week, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, for another stimulating conversation. Good night.
Good night.